Let me click through a few screens. Oh yeah, now we're live.
Okay.
Oh, welcome back to another episode of Important Miscellaneous Talks. I'm your host, Bachelor Crossfield, and I am very tall. And we are changing the world one podcast at a time. And today we have a very special guest with us. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jacob Kelly. I'm a podcast host and marketer based in Toronto, Canada.
The infamous Jacob Kelly.
Yes, sir.
And we asked all Canadians. Can you please say about for us?
About?
Yeah.
I feel like I've done this before. That's some deja vu, man. I'm pretty sure we opened the podcast last time just like that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure as well. It's always a treat. Have this giveaway of making themselves very known that they're Canadian when they say about.
Yeah, very much a treat.
I honestly can't hear a difference, if I'm being honest.
All right, say it one more time.
About.
It's a oh, you know.
Yeah, at the end there. Okay. Okay.
Do y'all eat caribou? Is that a Canadian thing?
Caribou?
Yeah.
I've never eaten caribou. I don't know many people that do on a regular basis.
Oh, never mind then.
I've
Okay.
never heard of the caribou thing. That's interesting.
Gotta
Canadian
come
bacon is ham, right?
Canadian what?
Canadian bacon is ham, right?
I believe so.
That's
I'm not
bacon.
sure.
It's not bacon.
So, what qualifies you to be a marketing expert?
That's a good question. I've been working in marketing since I was 19. I went to school for marketing, started at 18, did 2 years, got a diploma, and then got straight into the industry. So I worked for a couple of professional sports teams in marketing. I ran my own marketing agency for a couple of years, and I recently became a marketing executive at a tech company.
Oh, that's dope, man. What tech company?
It's called Surf. So it's a browser extension that lets you save money. It gives you get discounts and exclusive rewards and stuff from brands for browsing the internet. So you exchange anonymous browsing data for discounts, rewards, gift cards, giveaways, and stuff like that. And so we're sitting at, I think, over 250,000 users now. We started it last year or the year before, actually, 2021, late 2021. And so we do that on the consumer side, and then on the business side, on the B2B side, we package all the anonymous data into insights and stuff and sell it to brands.
Got you. So, how can someone else reach that level of marketing expertise in today's day and age?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it a ton, if I'm being completely honest. I think for me, it's just kind of taking it one step at a time, right? Like there wasn't like a big overarching plan to try and get to where I am. And I don't even think I'm anywhere that's like crazy unattainable or anything like that. And maybe that might be a flaw of mine, right? It might be a bug, not a feature, that I haven't had an overarching plan or like a long-term goal or anything like that. I've kind of just taken it one step at a time and made the most of every opportunity that I had. You know, when I was working in sports, I was just trying to learn as much as I could, soak up all the knowledge, just work a ton of hours. And from there had some clout's not the right word. I don't have clout today even. But like I had a reputation somewhat from working with some professional sports teams. And so when I went and launched my own agency, I had that kind of in my back pocket as something that I can leverage. And I honestly, like, that was the plan. I was like, I'm just going to leverage the fact that I work for these sports teams and to get clients. And it ended up not working. It all ended up being about relationships. Like all of my clients that I ended up getting all came in through referral. So I guess the secret, now that as I'm kind of talking, I'm realizing the answer here is really relationships, right? Like relationships matter, but a lot of people, like, there's the debate of like, is it relationships or is it experience? And I think at the end of the day, the answer's in the middle. As with most things in life, the answer lies somewhere in the middle. It's the relationships that you have, but it's also being able, when given the opportunity, to make the most of it.
So in regards to relationships, how important is it not to burn bridges?
I mean, I don't think you should ever try to burn a bridge. I'm a very I try to make everyone happy. So I haven't necessarily burned a lot of bridges in my life. I think it's important, right? You never know. The world's a lot smaller than you think it is. Like I was telling you guys before we jumped on here, I host a meetup with my friend in Toronto for people in the creator economy. And I had my buddy who's from Ottawa that moved to Toronto as well, with someone that my friend knew who works in like the F1 space in marketing. And they were talking, and my friend's brother is named Deepak, and he lives in Miami. And so we were talking about his brother, and this guy who I'd never met before and never met my friend before was like, wait, Deepak from Miami? And my friend was like, yeah, it's my brother. And he's like, no way. When I was in Miami a couple months ago, I was hanging out with him. And like, so the world is so much smaller than you think it is. Like everyone is so connected in some way, whether one or two steps away. Like for work, I do a TikTok series where it's like connecting surf to different famous people. And like, we can usually do it in 3-4 steps. Like I've connected to random hockey players from the 80s, Mr. Beast, Jeff Bezos, all under 5 steps, because the world is that connected. The world is that small. So I don't think burning bridges is a wise decision.
This Deepak, is that his government or his alias?
That's his real. His name is Deepak Sharma, and he runs a company called Deep Social Brands.
Wow.
And they help personal brands, people with personal brands, establish their personal brands using TikTok. So they work with thought leaders and just high performing individuals in their space, and they help them kind of build a personal brand around what they know, specifically using TikTok and now YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, but it started primarily as a TikTok agency. He's also from Ottawa, and he co-founded it with my friend Jamie Lee, also from Ottawa, and they just recently moved down to Miami and just signed a 2-year lease in a nice apartment on the water.
Nice.
Okay.
Actually, you guys know Jamie, don't you?
Yeah, we interviewed Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, Jamie and Deepak is his co-founder with the business.
Nice.
That is a small world, right?
Mhm.
Prime
There you
example.
go.
So you recently interviewed the legend Gary V. How did you get? How did that come to fruition?
That's a long story. I'm actually working on like a few people asked me, and I will tell you guys, but like I'm working on an essay right now and like the whole story on how I landed Gary Vee. And I'm editing it now, and it was like 12 pages when I finished the rough draft. So it's like I'm trying to slim that down a little bit. But essentially, like I'll try and give you guys the short version so we're not here for forever. But I always wanted Gary. Like Gary was one of the dream guests when I started my podcast back in 2018. And he was always like, whenever anyone asked me, like, who are your dream guests? Like Gary would always be on that list. And then in 2019, I went to New York and I shot 10 podcasts in 6 days with my good friend Hayden Cashin, who was also my first guest ever. And on that trip, we got into Vayner twice. We interviewed Caleb Ralston and Brandon Hatcher, who worked at Vayner. And Gary wasn't there, but Brandon took us into Gary's office. So we took pictures in Gary's office when we were done recording the podcast. And I just knew that like eventually some way I'd get Gary on the show. Like for me, it felt like a matter of it felt like a matter of when, not if. And so back in 2019, whenever Gary would say something I'd never heard him say before, I would write it down in a note on my phone. So for like 3-4 years, every time Gary said something random that at the time I was listening to a lot of Gary content, I don't listen to as much as I used to, but I used to listen to it like every day. And so whenever he'd say something I'd never heard him say before, I knew not a lot of other people know that. So I'd write that down. And then I had this list in my phone that I'd just been adding to for like a few years. And then I went to VCon. My friend Hayden had tickets and he asked me if I'd go with him. And at VCon, I bumped into Gary randomly. Like I wasn't in a meet and greet line. Like the meet and greet lines were like 3-4 hours long. And I was like, I'm not just going to stand in line for 4 hours. But on the first day, like a couple hours into the conference, I just bumped into him in like this random spot. There was like a few people in front of me waiting to talk to him, but no one else. So I was like, well, I'll just get in line with these people. And hopefully I get to talk to Gary before he gets like whisked away to go give a talk. And luckily I was the second last person they let talk to him. And when I was waiting in line, I was going through my note and I was like, I'm going to ask him something to like catch him off guard here. And I get my shot to take a picture and I'm like, hey, can I ask you a question? Knowing that would set the bar low because he'd be like, this kid's probably going to ask me like, how do I grow my TikTok or something like that.
Yeah.
And instead I asked him about this game he invented in high school called Grub Ball, which is like a football variant type game that he created because he didn't make or he wasn't playing on the actual football team. And so when I asked him my question, I was like, are you going to make that when you own the Jets, are you going to make them play Grub Ball in practice? And he like broke away from the camera and looked at me quickly because he was so caught off guard. And he's like, how do you know about that? And I basically said, like, I'm a podcast host. I'm known for my research. Can we do a 5-minute interview? And he's like, yeah, email me with Grub Ball in the subject line and we'll set it up. And so that was really how it happened. Is I just was able to hit him with some like not value up front, but like I showed him what I was capable of right off the bat, and use that to give me an opportunity to ask to come on my podcast.
That is such a good strategy. I never thought about that to just jot it down in your notepad whenever you have a chance about just the random things that they say. Wow. I might start doing that with people to catch them off guard. Like 3-4 years later, it's like, oh wow, how do you remember that? Like
it's like he hit him with the Nardwar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten that a few times because that's what I used to do, right? Like that used to be the focus of my social life. It was like telling the person's story, and then like I would do all the digging to find the nitty gritty early details that they would be so surprised I'd know. And like it was cool, but didn't necessarily like provide a ton of value to the guest, right? Like there's a time and place for a question like that, and to do those like Nardwuar type moments where the guest freaks out and I get the validation because the guest freaks out and stuff. But like really, like your audience doesn't necessarily care about who their fourth grade English teacher was. Like the audience won't get a ton of value unless they're like a diehard fan. So those questions are used. Now thinking about it as I'm going into a new show is like to use those more strategically to kind of build a connection with the guest off the bat, but not do it the whole time because I think it gets boring. Not necessarily boring, but I think like the audience doesn't get as much value out of that, and instead focus on like those tangible takeaways and providing value to the audience by asking the guests about their expertise and not just harping on like these random stories that I can find deep in the internet.
Right. You mentioned how you were writing this long essay, and you wrote about for Gary Vee about like 3 to 4 pages worth. How long was it? 10 pages worth?
12.
Yeah. So it was 12 in the beginning, and then so when I had 4 pages of questions just from like over the years of writing stuff down, and I was like, I don't need to do any more because like I have 4 pages. I have a 15-minute podcast with him. I'm not even going to get through a page. And then like a couple days before the interview, I was like, well, I don't think a little bit more research would hurt. So it's been like 2 days just like going. And then I just wrote this yesterday, like into the depths of Google, pulling out the most random Gary facts I could. And I went from 4 pages to 12 in 2 days. And then I went through it again and I cut 2 pages because like none of this isn't good enough. And then I had 10 pages left over. So by the time I sat down for a 15-minute podcast with Gary, which ended up being like 11, 12, because he had a call run long, so he was a little bit late, I had 10 pages for like a 10-minute interview. So I still have like 9 3/4 pages for whenever I interview him again.
Is that just a habit of you just always going above and beyond?
I think it came from a place of insecurity in the beginning of like, I don't want to run out of things to talk about. And so I would just try to know everything. And then as that happened, more and more people would be like, how do you know that? Wow, I can't believe you know. I kept getting all these positive reactions. And so for me, it became like almost like just like an easy thing to do for validation. Okay. And so that's kind of what was born out of. I mean, I always have done a lot of like research. Like I'm always been like a list kid and like writing shit down. And like even I went to school for marketing, so we had to do these big reports with lots of research. Like I built the skill coming into the podcast, and then again, like I said, it started from insecurity and became a place to kind of like set myself apart to the guest. But again, I think to the audience that there's a point where it's like that doesn't provide a ton of value to the audience. But at the end of the day, if I just do it for like an hour straight, it's like I don't like you don't come away as a listener with a ton of takeaways, right? Like you're not thinking about, oh yeah, he talked about his grade 11 baseball coach, like his junior. It's like they don't think about that after. Like to make someone think about the show after, you have to like give them something that actually makes them think differently or something that they're going to implement because it was so valuable. And you don't necessarily get that when you just talk about someone's story the whole time.
What would you say is the biggest thing you learned? If I know a 10-minute interview might not be learning as much as you would like, but if there's anything, what were some of the things that you learned from the Gary Vee interview?
I think what I learned from the Gary Vee interview is about Gary himself and why he's such a good guest. Like, obviously, he's a great guest because he has like 25 billion followers across social media, and he's just a big name. But his pattern recognition, which he talks about, like that's what he does. He looks for patterns. He looks at how he can improve things. His pattern recognition is so high that even in the interview, he's noticing the patterns in his answers, and he's able to weave that back into future answers, which creates like a consistent narrative throughout the podcast. So it feels more consistent. It's not a bunch of random questions when Gary's answering, because he's able to connect answers from random questions so that it all feels consistent. So I thought that was really interesting how he's able to do that. He's able to kind of create an overarching, like a nice feeling narrative because he's connecting his answers back so often. And he's also able to take a question that's just totally random that shouldn't be able to provide value from and find a way to provide value to his audience based off of that.
You certainly learned a lot for a 10-minute podcast.
Well, it's because I sat back. I've done this with a few interviews now after I've done them in some other people's interviews, is I like break it down like game tape. I write down every single question, what I thought it was good about it, what I didn't like about it, how I could have done it better next time. Like, and so I did that for Gary. So every single question has like 3-4 bullet points underneath it and like a note that I have of like me fully breaking that down. And I realized that after the fact when I went through and I like properly broke it down.
Now, you mentioned that nostalgia is making a comeback in 2023, and you focused a lot on nostalgia when interviewing Gary. So why do you think nostalgia is making a comeback?
I think nostalgia is so powerful because it's a combination of every emotion, right? Like there's love in there, there's hate in there. Like you reflect back, you like miss those moments. But like when you're growing up, there's moments you hate, there's moments you love, there's moments that were hard, there are moments that were easy. You know, I think it's just a combination of everything. And I think also like there's just a natural, I think we'll always be nostalgic. Like every time looking back, like you're nostalgic. At least I am. I'm nostalgic for every period of my life, even if in the moment I didn't feel like I was enjoying it as much. Like, oh, I miss those days, you know, like for some reason. But I think it's because it's a combination of everything. You know, it's a combination of love. Like I just said, like it's just all emotions kind of rolled into one.
How can we implement nostalgia in our content?
I don't know. I honestly haven't thought about it that much. I think with the Gary one, I focus so much on nostalgia. Also, sorry if you guys can hear sirens in the background. I apologize for that. But I think for Gary, I focused on so much because I just knew he was a super nostalgic guy, and now it'd be a way for me to set myself apart, which is why there was nostalgia weaved into that interview. And I think what I'm doing now in terms of like content, like I'm writing this Gary Vee essay, but I'm also like looking at other like past creators, like non-YouTube creators. It's like I just wrote an essay about Queen, like the band, not the person. I'm going to work on about James Cameron and find these like lessons from old art from the past and apply it to modern context. So that's one way I'm kind of doing it. But I haven't really thought about it. It's a good question. I haven't thought a ton about how to weave nostalgia into what you're making other than talking about nostalgic things.
Bro, as an interviewer, the best feeling is when someone says good questions.
Yeah.
You said it 3 times so far, so that means a lot coming from you. I think when it comes to nostalgia, I think you can never go wrong. I think we all embellish things of, when you're a child, when you first time you saw Kobe Bryant play, things of that nature. I think nostalgia's been making a comeback for a long time now, where like Pokemon cards are now cool, like things of that nature.
So I think with that, with like Pokemon cards specifically, what's interesting, like why those things that we deem nostalgic are coming back is because all the people who grew up doing it are parents now. And so they are trying to take the parts of their childhood that they loved and give it to their kids. And so they're going to pick all the things they're nostalgic about and repurpose it for a younger generation, which is why all these things that we find nostalgic are making a comeback, because we're part of that generation that's having kids now that wants their kids to experience the same things.
What would you say are some of the bigger marketing trends moving forward?
That's a good question. I honestly spend more time thinking about like content and stuff than marketing, like in the creator world. But I think that with marketing, I think we're going to see AI continue to make waves. Like our designer at work is already using generative AI imagery in the graphics he's making, which looks really cool. So I think that's going to be part of it. I'm interested to see how marketing spend goes towards influencers and what that looks like. I don't have like a proper like prediction on that. But I'm curious if we're going to see ad dollars shift away from TikTok and go back more towards long form, just because you have a different relationship with a long form creator to a short form creator. Those are a few things I'm thinking about recently, like AI and kind of where marketing spend is going. I also think one thing, actually, this kind of like ties back, and I'm not going to try and sit here and plug the company I work for all day, but third-party cookies are going away. So like your ability to track people off your websites, like Google, like privacy is going to become more and more a thing. So being able to have a clearer picture of who your customer is going to become harder and harder, which is the solution we're trying to provide with collecting opt-in data. So we're not like all the data we collect is opted in by users. A user opts in for us to track their data anonymously. So like their name's not attached to it, like their email, their phone number, nothing's attached to the data. Just demographics like age range, approximate location, stuff like that. So we can like paint a picture of this type of person, but not exactly who that person is. And it's all cohorted together too. So it'll never be an individual user's data, but it's to try and help marketers get a better understanding of their consumers and their target market, because like you're not gonna be able to track people off of your website much longer because Google's limiting third-party cookies. You've already seen Apple has the feature where you can ask apps not to track you now. So just tracking and I think it's a tough spot to discuss like consumer tracking, right? Especially when they're not aware of what's happening. Consumers should be in control of how and when they're tracked and what their data is used for. So I think it's going to become even harder for marketers to get a clear picture of who their target audience is and what they're interested in, because they're not going to be able to track them without consent anymore. Which is, if you ask me, like as a marketer, I think that's a good thing. I think consumers should be aware and should be in control. I don't think brands should be able to just exploit consumers without their consent.
What are your thoughts on email marketing?
Email marketing, I honestly don't touch a ton of it with my job. We have someone that handles a lot of that. And like I literally, when I say like I got added as to the executive team, like that literally was as of Monday. So it's like it's a very new thing for me. So I'm still kind of getting caught up in like the overarching on everything we're doing. I was very like social media, working with the graphic designer quite a bit, aware of what was going on, but not like overseeing it as much. So I haven't done a lot with email marketing in terms of with Surf thus far. I think as an individual, you should try and build an email list because you own that list, right? Like you don't own your YouTube, you don't own your Instagram, like that can go away. Your email list you will always have. And so I think that's an important thing. So I'm trying to figure out what an email list looks like for me. I started one 3 years ago that I did for like 3 months, or 2 years ago that I did for like 3 months and stopped. I just restarted it. It's just right now it's super basic. It's just called Content Caviar. And I send you the best things, the best pieces of content I've consumed in the last month. So it's super low touch. I don't send you an email every couple of days. Like it's just once a month with the best things I've consumed. So from like an email perspective as an individual, I think it's important. And in terms of business, obviously it's important as well because you own that list. So whether you're a brand or an individual, having an email list is a good idea.
How do you build an email list?
That's what I'm still figuring it out from the personal aspect. I think it's providing some form of value to the person in exchange for their email, right? So you see a lot of freebies like, hey, you want to get this case study, give us your email, and then you can download it. Or you want to get this ebook I made that's like 12 pages on like how to like a self-development ebook, give me your email. And so it's providing value up front. It's rarely do you get the email just because they like the idea of what you're writing so much. Like maybe if you have a strong personal brand already, you can do that. But if not, you build an email list by providing value first.
Got it. So what are some of the content creation trends? Because you say you've been more focused on content.
I pay attention to that quite a bit. And I think what's interesting is we're going to see a lot more people try to make the jump to long form content from short form, and it's going to become harder. It's not an easy transition, right? Like I'm sure you've seen a lot of people who've popped off on YouTube Shorts, like 4 million subscribers that get like 25,000 views on a long form video because they built their entire subscriber base on short form content and they can't make that jump. And I think for me, I was thinking about this the other night and I was like, I think really like we think it's going to be such an easy transition because it's video to video, but like the skill set required for a long format to hold someone attention for like 12 minutes is dramatically different from what it takes to hold someone attention for 45 seconds. Right. Like I was trying to come up with like a good like analogy for it. It's like, and I don't even know if this is a perfect analogy, but it's like someone who's really good on the radio, all of a sudden trying to go do public speaking. You're still talking, but it's a completely different way of talking, a completely different experience with the audience. And I think that's kind of like what it is from short form to long form video. We think they're the same because they're both video, but it's a dramatically different skill set that is required to do one or the other. Other trends, I think we're going to see more people focus less on. We're seeing more of a focus on storytelling. I think YouTube has over-indexed on spectacle. It's like crazy challenges and lots of money and just like a lot of shit happening on screen at once to hold your attention so you don't click off the video. And I think we're going to start to see that slowly shift, right? Like Mr. Beast just dropped a video that was more storytelling and less like in your face, everything, like a lot of fast-paced, quick editing. So I think we're going to see a shift to more storytelling and a little bit away from spectacle. I think it's going to take some time, but I don't know if you guys watched Ryan Trahan or not, his 30-day vlog challenge where he started in LA with a penny and made enough money to get all the way across the US to Mr. Beast in Carolina. And he did it starting with a penny. He had to find ways to make money that all originated from the penny. So the first thing he did with the penny was he traded it for a pen. He traded a pen for a bottle of water, sold a bottle of water or something like that. And then he like just did that and was able to get all the way across the US. And he did that in a vlogging format. And so I think we're going to see vlogging continue to have a resurgence. One, because he did that and it worked. Like he crushed. Like he was pulling millions of videos every day on a daily vlog, which everyone thought was dead in YouTube. Like that wasn't possible anymore. Daily vlogging was in the past. Ryan proved it's still possible if you have a strong enough concept around it. So I think we're going to see a resurgence of vlogging because of that. And also because Casey Neistat's vlogging again. And so many of the current generation of creators, back to nostalgia, grew up watching Casey. And so they're nostalgic for the vlogging format because they fell in love with YouTube because of Casey Neistat, who was vlogging. And so Casey's vlogging again, so there's a nostalgic feeling. Ryan Trahan's proved vlogging can work. So I think we're going to see more people start to vlog throughout the year.
I think I would agree because lately what I've been seeing on YouTube is a lot of vlogging, but a lot of people going overseas and doing vlogs. Like, I guess you could say this Passport Bros movement.
Mic drop.
Yeah. My alarm keeps going off, and it's stupid.
You keep
And
hitting.
I press stop, but it's retarded. My fault, yo.
All
It's
good.
really pissing me off.
This is
And I don't.
the beauty of live, man.
But
Right.
the weird part is I don't have an alarm on, but it's like counting down.
Is it a timer, not an alarm?
Oh, good question. Uh, at this point, I don't really know what it is. I just want to throw the whole thing away. Sorry for the foolishness. We should be fine now.
I
Um, I was especially with this passport bros movement where a lot of people are leaving the U.S. going overseas and they're documenting their experiences being overseas and
mm,
stuff like that. So I do agree, and like you said, a lot of people originally fell in love with that concept of kind of long term videos because when you stated that, I think we're at a time where attention spans are at an all time low. It's
mm.
ridiculous. We live in a popcorn era where we want things fairly quick. But I do agree. I do see the transition into long term videos, especially on YouTube.
100%. I think we're still going to see short form video because it's easier and everyone can do it.
Hmm.
But I think trying to make the jump from short form to long form is hard.
Yeah.
Do you think that it might be better for those content creators to have a channel dedicated to YouTube Shorts and another channel dedicated to long form?
I haven't done a ton of thinking about this. I talked to, do you guys know Eric, the YouTuber? I was talking to him about this, and he just recently passed 10 million subscribers and did like made the world's largest pizza.
Oh yes,
Um,
him.
yeah, yeah. So I was talking
Yes.
to him, and he was like, because this was like when YouTube Shorts first started, everyone was doing YouTube Shorts channels and then a long form channel. But in his mind, he's like, it should, as long as your long form content is good enough, Shorts should kind of help elevate that. And so he puts it all on one channel. I know some people don't. So I honestly haven't done a ton of thinking about this.
Mm.
I think my thoughts on it right now, because I'm starting to do some more YouTube content myself. I've only posted one video so far, but it's like something I want to keep doing this year. Is I think you want to kind of nail a long form format that people like before implementing shorts. I'm not sure if that's the move, but I've talked to some other creators who are doing this as well. Like I've talked to Leon Hendricks, who just changed, I believe he changed his channel name to Driven, like DRVN. And he didn't do any shorts and he grew to 400,000. He has like a diehard community now of people. One of these guys who came up to the coffee meetups I've been doing, his name's Mike Hanna. He's only posted a few videos, but like he just popped off with a 9.8, 10 million view long form video. And so he's growing quickly now. He's just passed 80,000 subs and he hasn't introduced shorts either yet. So it's like, I think that might be the move, is like to build a true diehard community to like figure out what the format is that people love and then elevate it with shorts. Like a lot of these bigger YouTubers, like Eric as an example, like when he started YouTube, there wasn't shorts. And so he built an established audience without it and then started incorporating it into when he already had formats that work. So I think like that's me just kind of thinking off the cuff right now. I haven't done a ton of thinking about it yet, but I think shorts should almost come after and everyone's leading with it because it gets you quick views and instant gratification.
I think to build that core fan base, I think long form might be the best route because if you have somebody dedicated enough to watch it for 10, 15 minutes in comparison to 12 seconds, I think they're much more heavily invested.
Much more invested in, like, there's more of a relationship there, right? Like, well, can you guys name me the last 5 TikToks you watched? You can't.
Yeah, no.
Because no one, like, because you're just like, it's almost a passive thing, right? But like the last YouTube video I watched, I don't know if I could do 5. 5's even a lot for long form, but like I watched a podcast with American Baron. I watched a lecture by Neil Gaiman, who's like an author at MIT, and I watched Lupe Fiasco's lecture at MIT because he's a tenured professor there now. And like I could think, because those are things, yeah. But I spent a lot of time with those videos. But like a TikTok for 7 seconds, I'm gonna forget it in 30 seconds. But like long form stuff sticks with you more as well.
You're a Lupe fan?
I was a Lupe fan. He was one of the first CDs I ever bought was his Lasers album. Haven't listened to him. Yeah, haven't listened to a ton lately, if I'm being honest. But like it popped up and it was all about he's teaching a class basically about rap music. And it was like an hour and a half lecture. And I was like, that's super interesting. And so I listened to it. It was a really cool talk.
Uh, does he have a degree?
Mm-mm. He never went to college.
See, that's crazy, man. You end up a professor, tenured professor
I'm pretty sure he's tenured. Yeah.
at MIT with a high school diploma.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's tenured. He was talking about like he's like, yeah, guys, I have office hours. You guys just come through if you want me to read like a white paper or talk to me or ask me questions. And like I was like, this is crazy.
Wow, the freaking things you can do with influence, man. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, and it
Um,
was interesting. He was talking about like he thinks rap music's almost on like the decline now, which I thought was really interesting.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
Let me hold on. I have like let me check my notes to make sure that I get this right because I don't want to misquote Mr. Fiasco.
I think it's less of a decline and more of a transition. I don't know what that
Hmm,
transition is to yet, but typically when things go quiet in rap, something big is on the horizon.
that's true
interesting.
because I feel like it's fake on quiet mode right now.
Yeah, rap it's tough because it's really all about what have you done for me lately.
Yeah,
So much in hip hop and rap. So it's if you're doing the same thing to me lately, then I'm gonna move on.
Where is it
or
here? He was saying that is stagnating, and he's looking because a lot of the talk was about surprises. Like you build surprises into your songs, and that's what makes them so good. Like you build a pattern that the audience expects, and then you break that pattern. Like Stan, the Eminem song, was one of his examples where it's like the fan is writing to him for 3 verses, and then Eminem is writing back to the fan for the 4th verse, which is like also breaks the pattern because it's supposed to be pattern break on the 3rd time, but Eminem broke the pattern on the 4th time, which in itself is a surprise. So a lot of the talk was around surprises, and he says that he's looking for surprises now outside of rap, and that a paradigm shift is coming when he's looking for a surprise. I'm trying to think. He doesn't think rap will go away, but it won't be at the top for much longer, which is natural progression that's happened to every genre of music.
mm, what's gonna be on top? Pop? Like
I don't know.
what
I think he's trying to figure out what comes next, right? Because I think whatever has come next to be the next big thing isn't something that was existing, like something that starts small and then grows.
Interesting.
And I don't think these notes are clear enough. Like he made a much more concise point than I
Yeah,
am right
yeah, yeah.
now, so I would definitely recommend watching it.
Okay, so Lupe or Kendrick?
In terms of just like who's better,
Yeah, to you.
I would say Kendrick.
Who do you like more?
Honestly, I have more of a nostalgic factor with Lupe, just a little bit, because I got into Kendrick a little late. Um, but I'd say more recently Kendrick.
Interesting. I don't know much about Lupe, so
That's
Um,
fair.
uh, I guess I would still take Kendrick. Well, I think that's just being biased, but I I believe because there's always been a debate between the two when I was watching a podcast about it, and I think the only difference is that when Lupe raps, we know what he's talking about.
Hmm.
Sometimes Kendrick will just go on a tangent of
Hmm.
fast flows and just use words at
Hmm.
times, which throws me off because it's like I don't know what you're talking about in this whole verse, but it sounds intricate, But and Lupe is the one that stated that, which he does have love for Kendrick.
Hmm.
that's
That
probably
alarm, man. Time's up.
Um, I'm just gonna have to deal with it at this point. I don't know what to do. Sorry.
It's all
Um,
good, man.
but yeah, I would definitely also agree. Like I think Lupe made a great point, but I'll still give it to Kendrick. He's relevant, right? So still,
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah, I want to do like a proper deep dive into Kendrick, right? Like when I wrote this essay about Queen, I spent 2 months doing a deep dive on Freddie Mercury, and then I spent 2 months doing a deep dive on James Cameron. I want to do one on Kendrick as well. I mean, the list of people I want to do a deep dive on is like disgustingly long at this point.
Mm,
But like, I just want to study the greats, right? I think Kendrick is one of those greats that I haven't spent enough time with that I want to.
yeah, same.
did you see the top 10 list that we had?
Yeah, the other day I did see that. It was like the Billboard and someone else's top 10 rappers of all time.
What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I have to look at the list again. Give me 2 seconds. Um, Billboard. Hold on. Let me find this. Okay, here it is. So it's Jay-Z, Kendrick, Nas, Tupac, Eminem, Biggie, Lil Wayne, Drake, Snoop Dogg, Nicki.
I see your eyes got wide there towards the end.
I mean, like, I haven't listened to a lot of Snoop Dogg was surprising.
Yes.
That's so disrespectful. Even though I agree, Like Snoop Dogg really is an icon, but seeing him on the list, seeing him on A list makes me cringe.
I think the metrics that they use to determine the rankings were like relevancy in rap today and longevity of career. Hence Jay-Z being number one. So I think that's what they prioritize. Tupac and Biggie, I mean, I think that goes without saying. Unfortunately, they passed, so they didn't get to have the career that we all wanted them to have. But when you look at those names, it's still relevant in rap today or relevant in culture today. Nas, 50, like they didn't care. Eric B. Rakim, they didn't care about none of the old school, like 3 Stacks. No 3 Stacks on there. Yo.
I could live without Nicki being on there.
Same.
Yeah. I also think like if we're talking about cultural relevance, Drake at 8 feels low.
What?
And maybe that's some Toronto bias, but like I just feel like he's on a decade plus run where everything he's dropped has been like before it drops, it's a big deal. What the reception is different, but like every time Drake drops, people are talking. I mean, that's true for most, but like I don't know, I think he's on a different level.
Drake, they talk about Drake a lot more than others. There are levels to it.
I guess.
Which I was surprised, but I think that would just come with time. I think if you look at the list, they prioritized the old heads. They did like from like 98, 95 on type of thing, and Drake wasn't even around back then. So.
Yeah, that's true. But like I'm 26 now. I can remember Drake dropping when I was 13 and being excited about it.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think many 26-year-olds are making this list.
But I'm like, yeah, it's like half my life that Drake's just been around, right? So I could also have bias for that reason.
That's
right?
true.
No, legit. I mean, Drake has provided a lot of hits, man. Since that time frame, for real. More people. Out of everybody on that list, today's day and age, they know way more Drake songs than anybody else on that list. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, this is Generation Z or X, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, bro.
I mean, he's nice.
We're his age, like, like we're his age.
I also just realized I'm actually 25. I'm not even 26 yet. I don't turn 26 for like 6 months. I don't even know my age, but that's over half my life that Drake's been around.
Wow, we're older than you. Wow. You was born 97?
Yeah. Yes, sir. 97. Were you guys?
96.
96? Nice. It's a good year.
Prince and I talked about Snoop Dogg and how there's an argument he might not even be top 20 or top 15.
And like you think about like I remember knowing who Snoop Dogg was, but like Snoop Dogg started dropping music, and when I realized his name was Snoop Lion. Like when I was like early high school, he was dropping his Snoop Lion, and then I was like, "Oh, interesting." Like I hadn't done a proper Snoop Dogg deep dive until that point. And then I went back and like listen to a bunch of the old records. Like when he came out of Snoop Lion, I was like, "Wait, what's going on?" I thought it was Snoop Dogg, and it was a whole thing. But like, I feel like that was I don't know if that's a career misstep. Like Snoop's still super relevant, right? Like,
yes.
So that's a big thing. Like musically, like I don't know, I can't name you a ton of his records recently, but like whenever he pops up in conversation, right? Like he's done a good job just being a name in popular culture, right?
Yeah, he does a lot. We see him in commercials. Like we see a lot of him.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Paul.
I was just saying, I'm fascinated by like multi-hyphenate creators, people who are good at multiple things, like Snoop acts, Snoop raps, Snoop's good at business. Like he was at VCon talking about NFTs with his son, and I was like, what is going on here? Like he just stays up on things.
I think 50 Cent does a lot of similarities. So I'm like, if you're using those metrics to put Snoop on this list, 50 Cent, in my opinion, arguably had the highest peak in hip hop history.
Yes.
When he was at his most relevant. And
Yes.
he had the culture going crazy, and he's still relevant in culture today.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't 50 on that list? He can arguably be higher than Snoop Dogg if that's the case. 'Cause I think when you look at discography, 50 might have Snoop beat when it comes to his music portfolio.
I don't know enough. I'm not going to make a claim here that gets people heated in the comment section because I don't know what I'm talking
It's
about.
it, it's tough because people would generally say, well, 50 only has that one album, Get Rich or Die Trying, which is not just that. People, everybody doesn't go diamond on the regular. You know what I'm saying? So,
Especially back
uh,
then.
I personally think he has a better discography. People say Doggy Style. You gotta consider the songs he wrote, who he wrote for, especially writing for Dre. Um, Snoop still drops music to this day. A lot of music, especially him owning Death Row. So he's pushing his artists, jumping on a lot of features. But a lot of people wouldn't know that, and I don't think a lot of people would care unless you're from like the LBC or something. Um, but like even 50 said in terms of when they was doing the whole versus thing, 50 was like, listen, if I'm gonna go up against somebody, I need to go up against somebody like Snoop. And some people thought he was wilding for that, but it
What?
actually makes kind of sense.
It makes a whole bunch of sense. And
Yeah,
nobody of today can name you 5 songs from Doggy Style.
except these old heads, like Boot Capone and stuff.
Yeah, like, but uh, how do you plan on marketing yourself? And but you don't. Well, you are on a podcast. How do you plan on marketing yourself and your podcast in 2023?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to focus more on long form stuff. Like I was posting on TikTok last year at the beginning of the year, and I just stopped because I was like, I just don't enjoy this. Creating short form stuff isn't my jam, so I don't post on TikTok at all anymore. I'm going to focus on these essays and keep writing those essays and take lessons from old creators and apply them for modern creators. I think I'm going to keep doing that. I want to maybe build a newsletter. I had another idea today for like doing YouTube video breakdowns, kind of like marketing examples, which is like a newsletter, but do it for YouTube videos and like why I like certain videos and not necessarily focus on the mainstream content. Kind of go on the outside and find cool stories and cool creators that aren't like mainstream. So I think I'm going to just keep doing some long form stuff, making YouTube videos, then and just do it that way and just make the metric more so for be content that I'm proud of than just how many views it's getting. And hopefully it leads to views in the end. But
How do you keep getting invited to these social media events and conferences? Like you're all over, man.
so with the 2 conferences I went to VidCon, I went to Vid Summit. That was with the new podcast I'm working on. So they flew me down and we went there. We shot 7 podcasts at VidCon, 11 at Vid Summit. They haven't come out yet, but that's what I was down there doing. Was I got asked by the company, by Creator Now, which is the company I'm working with for the podcast, to come in and do interviews there.
Interesting. So how does someone get the attention of one of these agencies?
Comes back to relationships. So Creator Now is a company. It's an education platform that teaches you. It's basically film school for the modern age. So it's teaching you how to be an effective creator, how to go full time as a creator. They do workshops with some of the biggest creators in the world. It's co-founded by Eric, that YouTuber I talked about, who just passed 10 million. His 2 managers, Zach Honover and Kate Ward, and they also managed Yes Theory. I don't know if you guys ever watched Yes Theory. They manage Yes Theory and a couple other creators, but Eric and Yes Theory are the biggest. And so they created this company, and I interviewed Zach, the co-founder, a year before they launched Creator Now. So he was still like, Eric wasn't making videos yet. It was just Yes Theory at the time. So I interviewed Zach on my podcast. I think it was like an hour and a half. And when they decided, then they launched Creator Now, and like we kind of like loosely stayed in touch over a couple of years. And then a year after Creator Now had launched, he called me or he sent me a message on Instagram and was like, hey, we're launching a podcast. I don't know if this is stepping on toes or not, but I still remember the podcast you did with me 2 years ago. It's the best one I've ever done. Would you come host our podcast?
That is so dope, man. You really never know when the opportunity's gonna come.
That's just it, right? And so I was super lucky that he remembered that, right? Like he's a busy guy with a lot of stuff on the go, and like I don't feel like, as I said, the best. I don't know if that's actually accurate or not, but it was one of, at least not the, but one of the better ones. And yeah, and that's kind of what I talked about earlier, right? Where it's like the relationships give you an opportunity, but you have to have put in the work to make the most of that opportunity. I think that's what that was, right? That was episode 95. So it's about halfway through my podcast. And he came in, I interviewed this guy named Elliot Robinson, who started the Instagram page Dunk. And he's like, yo, I know this guy you should interview, because Elliot liked the interview so much. He called me Sean Evans on the podcast. He like took a video, he posted on a story, but he liked so much that he was like, you should talk to this guy, Zach. And then I just got lucky. I got given an opportunity by the hard work, and then had to fall back on the hard work to make the most of that opportunity.
Got it. Just be prepared, man. Preparation plus opportunity equals luck.
There you go. Yep.
So my final question, what do you think is your biggest obstacle holding you back from achieving everything that you want?
It's an interesting question too. It feels like a journal prompt that I have like a list of journal prompts that I use one every day. This feels like one of them. I want to give you a good answer. And I think for me, the biggest thing right now is just like prioritization, probably. I feel like I'm always doing too much, and I can never take like, it's like whenever I have free time, I fill it with something new. So it's like right now, it's like I'm working in marketing, I'm writing these essays, I'm filming YouTube videos, I'm hosting this podcast for Creator Now. I decided I was going to do fun little podcasts on the side just for myself. Like I'm going to interview this singer I really like because I went to her concert. And I was like, hey, I'm going to interview people just for fun. And she was like, okay, just hit me up when I do my album though, but I want to do this. So there's like that. And I'm writing screenplays. Like I feel like I'm just doing too many things. That's probably what it is. And so I was thinking on this last night, I think a lot of it fits in together really nicely. Like I think writing essays about creators leads me to have new thoughts and perspectives on creators, which I can then bring into the podcast for interviews and stuff like that. So like that fits, these creator meetups, which is another thing I'm doing, kind of fits into that world. But like writing screenplays, this doesn't. And I feel like I was trying to make it a focus, but I think I just need to make it a hobby again and kind of focus on all these things I'm doing in the creator world. So I think right now I think I need to be a little bit more focused on what I'm doing. And that's just something I've always done a bunch of shit at once. And I think I need to kind of narrow that focus a little bit.
Who's the singer?
Her name's Ruby Waters. So it wasn't actually her. It was her manager. Yeah, she's from Toronto. She's dope. And when I went to LA the first time, my first day there, I'd only been there a couple hours. My buddy texted me. He's like, yo, I have tickets to this small venue to see this girl named Ruby Waters. She's a singer from Toronto. You should come with me. And I hadn't heard her before. And I was like, I'm not going to, I was like, it's my first day in LA. I'm kind of tired. I'm just going to crash out tonight. Thank you though. And I didn't go see her. And then like 2 months later, I was listening to just like a Spotify playlist, and this song came out. I was like, this song is so good. And I looked, and it's this girl, Ruby Waters. And I was like, no way. It's the girl that I got the chance. I could have gone to see and didn't. And my buddy, who's actually from Toronto as well, he's like, well, if she comes back to Toronto, we'll go see her. And I was like, all right, deal. And then she announced a concert. My buddy texted me like, yo, tickets only $30. Let's go. And so we went. And after the concert the next day, I just found her manager's email and I reached out. He was like, yeah, this is fun. We could definitely do something like this, but she's releasing an album in a few months. Like, let's circle back and do it closer to the album release. I was like, all right, cool. Sounds good. And just sending shots like that to like, not trying to do it consistently, just if there's someone interesting that I would love to interview, see what happens. Right. Like I reached out to, I was close. I was talking to the Queen's guitarists people, and they were like, yeah, just reach out to us after the holiday. And I was like, all right, cool. And they're like, and we'll go from there. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I reached out after the holiday, and they were like, not right now. And they just shut me down. And I was like, okay. But like just taking big swings and seeing who says yes, right? Like, and just kind of going for it and not trying to make it a consistent thing, and just use it to stay consistent with interviewing, and also just to try and interview people that I don't think I would necessarily be able to, and just basically only take big swings.
Got it. Well, Mr. Kelly, this has been yet another pleasure. I need to come to Toronto and it's a Blue Jays game. They had an interesting offseason, the Blue Jays. So
did they? Honestly, I'm watching a lot of soccer right now, some proper football over in the UK, and that's my sport of choice at the moment.
English Premier League?
Yeah.
Who's your team?
Leeds United.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arsenal? That's fair. My family's from Leeds, and I've been there a lot. I've been there 6 times growing up, and so it's the club for me, and it's a terrible decision. It's caused a lot of stress and not a lot of happiness, but I still watch every weekend.
I'm a Mets fan, so I definitely understand your pain.
Fair.
All your heart's desires remain in the description. Please go check that out. Please go check out this wonderful man named Jacob Kelly. And until next time, I love you all.